Look at that. $3,745 to Adam Button. That's the check receipt. I already put the money in the bank because I thought it was too good to be true, and I waited for the check to clear because this was one I thought I had no chance of getting back. It was a 10-year saga to get, and it taught me so many lessons that I thought were really expensive lessons, but turned out to be pretty cheap lessons. And it's a crazy story, and I'm going to tell it. Okay, so I was an investor in IMAX. You know, IMAX, the big screen movie company, and I lost a ton of money, and I got it all back. Okay, let's go back to the start. This is around 2005, I'm guessing, and I was just out of school. I didn't have a lot of money. I had never invested in markets because I had no money, and I had saved up a little bit from working, and I had about $10,000, and like an idiot, I decided to bet it all on one company. I knew IMAX. You probably know IMAX. It's doing pretty well. They have these huge theater systems and they're popping up all over the place. And at the time, 3D movies had just started to come out. They were a big hit, and just IMAX in general seemed to me to be a really good bet on 3D, on movie experience, on action movies. The whole works, and there were also rumors that they were going to be taken over by, I think, Sony and maybe a few others were in the running. So shares were trading about $10 at the time I bought them, and they'd gone up to 12 on these rumors. So I had like made $2,000, which was like a fortune to me at the time, and I was feeling really good. And the merger or whatever was supposed to be announced at this earnings call. I think it was like in the summer, August or something of, I'm guessing it was 2005. Anyway, the earnings come out and it's a disaster. They call off the merger, and the reason they called it off is because they had an accounting scandal. Yeah, I don't need to get into the details, but you book revenues when they occur, when you deliver something, not when you make the sale. So they had sold a bunch of theater systems in China or whatever else, or had contracts to sell them, but they were booking the revenue in the current quarter when you're not supposed to book it until the quarter that it occurs. So it had inflated the revenues, and my guess is that when somebody was looking at the company to try and take it over, they were like, hey, your accounting is totally bogus and pretty much illegal, and we're not going to buy your company. So they announced this, and it was called, you know, at the time, the worst corporate press release in history. So you had a merger called off and an accounting scandal. Shares absolutely tanked. It was down like 50% overnight. So I had gone from up 2,000 to down 4,000, and it was like a kick in the gut. And you know, I was all torn up. I remember actually having bought the shares and people telling me, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I was like, I know better than everyone else, like every young first-time idiot investor. And so I lost a whole bunch of money, and at least at the time it seemed like it was so frustrating. It was so much money, and it really stung. So it was a big time lesson at the time. Anyway, fortunately, very shortly before that earnings announcement and that time, there were laws passed in Canada and the United States that made it possible for shareholders to sue companies who had misrepresented anything, really. And IMAX had clearly done that on the accounting. So very shortly after this earnings disaster, or this press release disaster, the class action lawsuit started. And I kind of followed it, and I thought, this was great. Well, let's see if it works. You know, let's put a little bit of time into this. So I fill out the forms, and they're like, yeah, we'll get back to you. And nothing really happens. Like, you think this would be a quick process, and I thought, well, maybe it'll take a couple years, and maybe there'll be something in it. 1 year, 2 year, like 5 years pass, you kind of forget about it and move on. But once in a while, there's like a new form to fill out, and I keep up with the news every year or so, and I keep sending in the forms, almost out of spite. And like 10 years, more than 10 years goes by. And finally I see this news, well, they settled a class action lawsuit in the US. Oh, but they hadn't settled it in Canada. Like it was like a dual listed stock. So then it went on and on again, and they almost got nothing in the US, but I had bought the stocks in Canada, and that continued. And eventually, not too long ago, it came to an end, and then it was like a whole new paperwork filing thing, and I filed them again, and they reject my claim. And I get the letter back, and it said, no, you didn't own the shares, and you need more proof. And I'm like digging through boxes. I've moved 10 times since then, and thankfully, really almost at the deadline, I find more kind of proof that I had the shares and send it in again. Whatever. I was doing it out of like just spite and persistence at that point. So finally, 10 years after the disaster, the class action gets settled in Canada. The defendants, IMAX, have paid $3.75 million. After lawyers' fees, that amount drops down to $1.62 million. So the lawyers got $2.1 million and left $1.6 million for the settlement. Back of the envelope, the company's market cap was something like $700 million, and it was cut in half, so there were about $350 million of losses, and the payment going to shareholders was $1.6 million. So I saw that and thought, wow, I am gonna get pennies on the dollar. I don't know what happened. I filed the forms, I lost on the thing like $4,000, and I ended up with $3,400. It was pretty much made whole. Of course, there's 10 years of lost interest or whatever on the money. But wow, I remember opening up the envelope, and I called my wife and said, oh good, this is gonna be funny, it's gonna be like $5. And I opened it up, it's $3,400. And I thought, nobody must have filed the paperwork. It was such a hassle and such a long period. I guess nobody filed it, or somebody messed up and moved the decimal place, and I got way more money than I was supposed to. Anyway, the money's in the bank, the check is cleared, and I'm not giving it back. So I guess there are two lessons in this. One is that you should never put all of your money in a single stock. There can always be an accounting scandal or some other corporate governance malfeasance that will cost you a lot more money than you can really afford to lose. And number two, if you happen to be in a shareholder lawsuit, fill out the paperwork. I'm gonna enjoy this money. Found money is so much more enjoyable than earned money. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening to my story. If you like it, hey, let me know. For ForexLive, I'm Adam Button.